Welcome back. A group of Republican senators is hoping to break the deadlock over the budget and the sequester as they seek to find common ground with the White House. Wisconsin Republican Senator Ron Johnson is part of that group, as well as a member of the Budget Committee, and he joins me now live. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, Senator. I appreciate it.
Good morning, Kristen.
So how would you characterize these talks that you have been a part of, that you've been having with the White House? Have you been able to find any common ground, and if so, where?
Well, I think we're describing them as kind of a sounding board, but it's really the first step in solving any problem. If you're going to negotiate something, at some point in time, you actually have to develop relationships. You need to, first of all, admit you have a problem. Then you have to properly define it. So I think we're really sort of in the admission of the problem stage. We're also in the definition of the problem stage. And what we're trying to do is find common ground. You know, I certainly found out in business, if you sit down and negotiate with somebody, it makes a lot of sense to spend a lot of time on the front end figuring out what you agree on. So I guess I typify it from a standpoint is we're talking to each other, which is a good thing, and we're trying to figure out exactly where there's some common ground, what you can agree on. That's far better than right away getting into arguments over what you disagree on.
Well, I want to play you what Harry Reid had to say about the talks on Tuesday. Take a listen, and then I'll get your reaction on the other side.
All they talk about is, Mr. President, what are you going to do? He's already done things that a number of people in my caucus, they're not wild about, but he's put forth his proposal. The Republicans refuse to come up with anything in writing.
So what is your reaction to that, Senator? And are you getting any pushback from Republicans? And how do you deal with that?
Well, first of all, the House has passed budgets. The Senate finally passed one this year. There's some pretty detailed proposals in that, so Senator Harry Reid is just simply wrong from that standpoint. But listen, again, the point being is we need to figure out what we agree on, and there's an awful lot of areas of agreement. I think most Americans are concerned about hollowing out our military. You know, we do really think that the federal government, its first priority is the defense of this nation. And so I think most people think that the sequester is not particularly good for our military, so we have to figure out, you know, how can we substitute some other spending cuts in lower priority areas so we can, you know, re-interject those dollars into the military so that we don't hollow out our military.
Well, speaking of common ground, yesterday the president laid out what the White House is calling a new grand bargain, offering up corporate tax reform as well as investing in infrastructure and jobs. You have supported some of those things in the past, so do you support the president's proposal? Where do you come down on his plan?
Well, he's got a framework out there, and so we're going to have to see the details. But there's a couple good things with that. He's acknowledging we have problems. We have an uncompetitive corporate tax rate that is really stymieing investment, you know, really disincentivizing investment into jobs and business expansion here. We've got at least $1 trillion, if not $2 trillion of corporate income basically parked overseas. That's a problem. And let's face it, our interstate highway system is 60 years old. We've seen bridges collapse. So we probably do need to spend money on infrastructure. But here's the problem, is the president got his more than $800 billion stimulus package. It was supposed to be spent on infrastructure, and it wasn't. It certainly wasn't spent effectively. So the devil is going to be in the details. But listen, I don't outright reject anything. I'm more than happy to listen to the detailed proposal where we can find common ground. That's what the goal of this is how can we start moving toward real solutions to the very significant challenges facing this nation.
I want to ask you about an idea that some Republicans are floating about using funding for the president's health care law as a bargaining chip in budget talks. Take a listen to what Bob Corker had to say.
It's a silly effort. What people are really saying who are behind that effort is we don't have the courage to roll up our sleeves and deal with real deficit reduction and spending decisions. We want to take ourselves out of the debate and act like we're being principled to the American people by saying if there's one dime of funding for Obamacare, we're not going to vote for the CR.
So where do you fall in this debate? Would you support defunding Obamacare and essentially not support any bill that funded it?
Well, first of all, I want Republicans and conservatives to be as united as possible. And we are absolutely united in wanting to repeal Obamacare, defund it, delay it, remove the most damaging parts of it. So anything we can do to prevent Obamacare from taking solid root, I think most Republicans will support. You know, what the strategy, what the tactics is, I'm for an all-of-the-above strategy. And it really, you know, the House is doing some pretty intelligent things. For example, they took a vote when President Obama decided to delay the employer mandate, the House took a vote, well, why don't we delay the individual mandate? That garnered the support of 22 Democrats in the House. I'd like to see the House take more of those votes to show the vulnerabilities and really undermine, certainly support in Congress for the health care law. Let's face it, it's Max Baucus, it's Senator Harry Reid that have called the implementation of Obamacare a train wreck. If there is one piece of legislation we need to repeal,
said that it was silly. Do you agree with him? Do you agree with Bob Corker that it is silly to use defunding Obamacare as a bargaining chip?
Listen, what we need to do is we need to move forward in unified fashion as possible as Republicans and conservatives to do whatever we can to prevent Obamacare from taking root. There are a lot of options we have here. I'd like to see the House pass a bill that allows states to opt out. I would love to see a repeal of the medical device tax. We had 79 senators vote to repeal that. The House should vote on that, and then the Senate should vote on it, and President Obama should sign it into law. How about a law to prohibit the IRS from being involved in the implementation and the operation of Obamacare? These are the types of things I'd like to see the House move forward so we can demonstrate to the American public how the support for Obamacare is eroding here in Congress. Look at the letters that the unions wrote to Congress here. James Hoff of the Teamsters, the National Treasury Employees Union, basically wrote a letter saying, you've got to fix this thing. It is going to be a disaster. It's destroying the 40-hour work week. So the more we can do in terms of raising the profile of the damage that Obamacare is going to do to our economy, to job creation, I think that's a good thing. And that's what we need to do, kind of a step-by-step approach to prevent Obamacare from taking root.
All right, Senator Ron Johnson, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.